Hey everyone, Mr. Sujano here, your source for gaming, tech, emulation, and open source news. Let's get started. Alright, to kick things off, I've been light on videos this week because my voice hasn't been holding up and, well, I haven't been holding up too well. So I'm currently battling influenza as well as pneumonia. I'm on medication, hopefully I'll get better soon, but at the same time here we've got a lot of news to talk about. And hopefully I can get through it all. So first up on the docket, we're talking about a pretty big update in the whole Meta court case that's going on right now where they were accused of piracy. They were accused of downloading a whopping 82 terabytes of data through torrents. They pirated data to train their AI. Anyways, here is part of their defense. And I don't want to say I want to cheer for Meta, but at the same time here, if this goes through, this could change things in a big way. So Meta defends using pirated material, claims it's legal if you don't seed content. So based on my understanding of Meta's defense, and I could be wrong about this one, but it seems they're saying it's okay to download stuff as long as you don't share it. And that to me is, well, that would really change things moving forward in terms of what people would see as legal and illegal. And I think there's a couple of companies out there who may disagree with what Meta is saying. I don't know, though I'm not a legal expert, but I'm very curious to see where this goes. I'm not going to lie here. I'm really curious to see what you have to say about this one, so let me know your thoughts about all of this in the comments below. Are you cheering for Meta in this? Are you hoping for Meta to lose? And what do you think about Meta's argument? It's okay to download as long as you're not seeding, or seeding minimally, I guess. I mean, this could be really huge for piracy and all of that moving forward, and what constitutes piracy and what doesn't, or what's a crime and what's not. And it's very interesting to see this argument, or this precedent, I would say, rather set from a huge company like Meta. And speaking about piracy, or I guess in this case, borrowing. Next up, we're talking about highly controversial PlayStation 3 emulator on Android, APS3E. And APS3E seems to have risen from the ashes. The GitHub was taken down, but a website is now up for this emulator. So they say right here in an update over on their website, first of all, thank you for all your support, encouragement, and suggestions. APS3E is an Android PS3 emulator based on RPCS3. We deeply respect RPCS3 and all its contributors, as APS3E would not exist without the groundbreaking work of the RPCS3 team. Due to our unfamiliarity with the GPL v2 we previously made some incorrect statements. Please rest assured that APS3E will always remain free and open source. If this is true, this is very big in a positive way. However, they're not out of the woods just yet, and well, the second paragraph that starts with however kind of cements that. They say, however, APS3E is currently in a very early and incomplete stage, lacking even basic elements like an icon or interface design. We need to gather user feedback for debugging and further development. Once the user experience stabilizes, we will publicly release the source code. They should be releasing it already. Now, in my opinion here, there should be zero reason as to why they're not releasing the source code, why it's not open source right now. Even if they have removed the monetary number from releasing the source code. If you remember, they were asking for $5,000, in which once they got it, they would release the source code. And then they reduced it down to $2,000. Well, even if it's $0, to me, it makes no sense to have this closed source if they're looking to improve it. Open sourcing the project, if they're not looking for any money, would make the most sense here, and having people help contribute. Additionally, and this is where things get even worse with the paragraph here that starts with additionally. They say, additionally, to express gratitude to our early sponsors, we have established an alpha testing group for donors. So taking a look at that, this essentially makes APS3E pay to play. They are allowing people who pay them money now to play this emulator, to use this emulator. And that to me is, well, it's in the same boat as locking the source code behind a paywall. Whereas instead, they've just changed this into an app they're charging for. And that as well is violating GPL licensing in my opinion. So remember I said this statement would be big in a very good way if it was true. Please rest assured that APS3E will always remain free and open source. Unfortunately, APS3E in its current form is paid and closed source. So this is worse than it was before. So based on this information, and you can disagree with me in the comments below, but you'd be wrong, I don't recommend donating at all to APS3E for early access. This is a very risky situation. You'd be essentially giving your money away to someone in hopes you may get something in return and you may not get anything. Additionally, you're paying for an app that has pirated code, that has borrowed code. This is super sketchy to me. This is not the way to do it. And I think they've taken a step in the complete wrong direction. I think they've made things worse than what they were before. And on a side note here, it seems that there are a bunch of forks of PS3E out there already that seem to be 100% free. If you're interested in learning more about anything, links to everything I talk about will be in the description below right at the bottom. And speaking about PS3 emulation on Android, next up we're talking about another new PS3 emulator on Android that seems to be in development. This one is called RPCS3 Droid, and is being created by Antique, the person behind stuff like Sudachi. Now it's worth noting that RPCS3 Droid is very early on in terms of development, so don't expect it to be working right away, and don't expect it to work with AAA titles right away, right out of the gate. This one probably will take some time to develop and to get into a state where everyone is happy with it. But at the same time, it may be one worth keeping an eye on. And this one is supposed to be 100% free and open source. And speaking about free and open source stuff, next up we're talking about Retrom. Retrom is a centralized game library collection management service with a focus on emulation. Configure once and play anywhere. And Retrom just got a brand new update. So at the time of filming, Retrom version 0.7.12 is the latest update. And with this latest update, there's a bunch of bug fixes and a brand new feature here, custom library structures. They say you can now define custom library structures if the existing single-file game and multi-file game options are not flexible enough. Next up, we're talking about Nintendo 3DS emulation on Android with Citra MMJ. Where MMJ is a fork of Citra, it's designed for performance as opposed to emulation accuracy. Anyways, MMJ stands for... I received a few comments that people were getting sick of that, so I'll skip by that. Anyways, here's Citra MMJ just got a brand new update, and apparently this fixes some Pokemon online connectivity issues. Now, unfortunately, the developer of this one is not very good at sharing their changelog. They do have a Weibo, I think it's pronounced Weibo account, where you can kind of see what they write about it. You do have to use Google Translate unless you can understand it, and, well, it may not necessarily be accurate. And if we go to GitHub here and just compare it against a previous version, there really isn't anything to compare. So this one is, this one is also arguably a little bit controversial, but at the same time here it is a new version, and a lot of people seem to really like Citra MMJ. And speaking about Citra, but removing the A and adding an ON, next up we're talking about Nintendo Switch emulation, Nintendo Switch homebrew emulation with Citron Emulator. And Citron Emulator also got a brand new update. So at the time of filming, Citra Canary Refresh version 0.5 is the latest update. And this one seems to be a pretty significant update. There's 88 commits since version 0.4 here. And they say it brings significant enhancements to core functionality, service implementations, and platform-specific optimizations. This update focuses on improved stability, enhanced network features, and better Android compatibility. So if I scroll down just a little bit here, we can see they've added a bunch of Vulkan improvements, including the fact they've added Samsung driver workarounds. They've added home menu launch functionality. They've also added RAM usage overlay, and they've improved the thermal display. On top of that, they've improved the audio service stability. They've improved network interface handling. And they've also here, implemented Nintendo account integration. So they've made a whole bunch of improvements to this one. It seems there's still a ways to go, and they also have a roadmap of what they want to do in the future. Next up, we're quickly talking about Marvel Rivals. Now, since launch, Marvel Rivals has been extremely popular. It's usually sitting on Steam's most played games list. In fact, right now over on SteamDB, it's sitting in 4th place. I think it normally resides in around 4th place. Anyways, that is a huge feat considering the game has only been out for a handful of months. And considering the game has only been out for a handful of months, it's being reported they've already passed 40 million players. That is a whole lot. And NetEase, the parent company here, has reported a net revenue, not gross, net, so that's after expenses, of $2.9 billion. And you can bet Marvel Rivals is a portion of that. Maybe not a huge portion because the game is so fresh, but at the same time, a portion of that. And speaking about millions of players, next up, we're quickly talking about Palworld, and I think this will help put things into perspective. Palworld has just announced over 32 million PAL tamers, or people playing Palworld. They say it's been a year since Palworld was released, and thanks to you, our fans, Palworld has surpassed over 32 million players across all platforms, Steam, Xbox, and PS5. And that is after 1 year as opposed to a handful of months like Marvel Rivals. Anyways, this is also a huge accomplishment for Palworld, and they're still smack dab in the middle of a lawsuit with Nintendo. And speaking about lawsuits and Pokemon, next up we're talking about a lawsuit with Pokemon, just not with Palworld 2. This is a completely separate lawsuit with a different game that, well, reportedly ripped off a few things from Pokemon. And if we take a look, the mobile game is called Pocket Monster Remake, and they have settled with Pokemon for copyright infringement. And this is a screenshot from Pocket Monster Remake. You can see it does look a lot like Pokemon. Anyways, here, there was a substantial settlement. I don't know the fine details of that settlement. I don't know how much this game made, but I'm very curious to know what the overall game made and what they ended up paying Pokemon. It is being reported that this lawsuit was held in China, and that's probably why you didn't hear about it before, or maybe you did hear about it, but didn't hear a whole lot of updates about it. And it seems that the overall verdict was for the company to pay Pokemon $14.7 million in damages, thereabouts. However, it seems it went to an appeal and a settlement was instead reached, which makes me guess it was somewhat less than $14.7 million, but I don't know what that is. Or maybe it was just how that $14.7 million was paid. I've got no idea there. I don't think we'll ever know. But at the same time here, interesting to me because this was held in China, but also because I'm guessing that this will probably help fund part of the lawsuit for Pokemon versus Palworld. I could be wrong about that. And continuing to talk about Nintendo stuff. Next up, we're talking about a rumor here about a brand new Nintendo Switch bundle. And this is for Super Mario Bros. Wonder. Now, it's said to be announced on February 27th, so just in a few days. And it will include a Switch OLED. They say blue-red console, but the image just shows the white one. A Super Mario Bros. Wonder, a voucher, not the physical game, so just the digital download, and a 3-month NSO membership, all for $350. I'm curious to see if this will be popular, given the fact that the Switch 2 is going to be announced relatively soon, within the next month or so. And the fact that, well, the Nintendo Switch 2 is kind of at end of life. We'll have to wait and see on that one. I think people will pick this one up. And I'm wondering if this is going to help push the Nintendo Switch to the top of the list for best-selling consoles. Let me know your thoughts about that. Next up, here's a friendly heads up. There's a brand new English fan translation of Mobile Suit Gundam on the Sega Saturn. And this game was exclusive to Japan. There's a brand new English translation available. And in my opinion, this is pretty exciting if you're a fan of the series. All of the information is right here in this YouTube video, and it seems the game is going to be available, or at least the mod is going to be available, the patch, over on SegaExtreme.net. It does seem that this is not a standard translation. A lot of work has went into it. It seems to have been in development, or at least in the works, since 2023. And there's a whole bunch of stuff here, including some enhancements. And speaking about enhancements, next up we're talking about one of my favorite King of Fighters games, and that's King of Fighters 13. Anyways, the Steam edition was the previous edition of this game, which you can no longer buy. Now you can only buy the King of Fighters 13 Global Match. The King of Fighters 13 Steam edition had a very positive overall review score, whereas the Global Match version, which is said to be an enhanced version of the game, has a mostly negative review score, which I think is terrible. It seems the biggest things that the Global Match version of the game is bringing to the table is rollback netcode and, well, enhanced online lobbies. And it seems that these biggest things have not been implemented very well at all, which to me makes this a very low effort release, and people are calling them out in the reviews based on that. Now, I don't want to be dramatic and say this is heartbreaking to see, but it is absolutely heartbreaking to see. I haven't had a chance to check out the Global Match version yet, and well, I don't necessarily think I'm going to upgrade just yet. I've still got the older edition. I don't play it online. I just play in arcade mode, and I'm actually one of the few people, maybe not few, but I'm one of the people who like to play games in arcade mode. I love that. So anyways, here I've got no incentive to upgrade just yet, even if it's a nominal fee just to upgrade from the Steam edition to the Global Match version. Either way here, I would probably not recommend the game in this state based on the reviews. Moving on, and this is a quick one, but arguably a pretty cool one. We're talking about PlayStation 4 emulation with Shad PS4. And it's being reported that Shad PS4 seems to have made some pretty significant enhancements or advancements, and it is now booting PT. Now, if we take a look here, it doesn't necessarily seem that this is playable, but at the same time, the fact that this is booting may be one of the next games that this emulator will play. We'll have to wait and see on that one because Shad does boot up quite a bit. It's just getting these games to play and working through graphical issues that seems to be some of the struggle. And that's completely understandable given the fact that PlayStation 4 emulation is still pretty early on in terms of overall maturity. And speaking about quick ones and emulators currently in early stages of overall maturity, next up we're talking about Xbox One emulation or translation with XWine1. And they're saying here another peak is now playable in XWine1, although the screenshot they're showing shows strawberry vinegar. So I don't know what the difference is between the two. I've never played this game, but I mean, at the same time here, if you're a fan of strawberry vinegar or another peak, I guess you might be very excited about this considering it's now playable. Next up, we're talking about Anbernic, and it seems that Anbernic has made a highly controversial system update for their Chinese language version of the firmware for their Anbernic XX devices. From my understanding, this has not hit the English language firmware yet. Anyways, this update includes a link to an app, or it includes the app that allows people to download ROMs, which may put Anbernic in some hot water with some big companies like Nintendo. We're going to have to wait and see here if Anbernic includes this app on English versions of their firmware moving forward and includes this app on most of their devices moving forward. I think this could spell out a lot of trouble for Anbernic. Unless according to Meta that downloading ROMs isn't going to be a problem, because I guess piracy isn't a problem at all provided you're not sharing or seeding that piracy. We'll have to wait and see on that lawsuit altogether because that may make something like this completely fine. Who knows? But anyways, here, this could be bad news for Anbernic in the near future, and I'm curious to see if they continue on with this behavior or if they back off and just revert to what they used to do. Next up, we're talking about Nintendo 3DS emulation with Tanuki3DS. And if you're a fan of 3DS emulation and a fan of 3DS emulators, you may want to pay attention to Tanuki3DS. It just got a couple of brand new updates here, and it's a 3D emulator for Mac OS, Linux, and Windows, and it's written in C. Now, at the time of filming, Tanuki3DS version 0.2.1 is the latest update, but with version 0.2.0, which was released like just the other day, there's native support for ARM64 on Mac OS and Linux, Windows support, app bundles for Mac, and app images for Linux. You can run the emulator entirely from a GUI, no command line needed anymore. Many more games are playable, and even more can boot from the title screen. On top of that, there's lots of performance improvements, including fragment shader generation and hardware vertex shaders, preliminary audio support, although it's not very good right now, and even more. And this is another 3DS emulator that I think is entirely its own thing. Next up here, we're talking about PlayStation 2 emulation with PCSX2. And if you're on Linux, this is some pretty cool news. The latest version here has enabled Wayland by default. This change comes in the latest nightly release version 2.3.168, so all nightly releases moving forward from this version should have Wayland enabled by default. And there does seem to be a problem upstream. So interestingly, this fixes a workaround for a problem that really isn't PCSX2, and the team has raised an issue upstream to have that fixed. We'll have to wait and see here to see if this does get fixed moving forward, but at the same time, on PCSX2's end, at the very least, they have this workaround in place and Wayland should be enabled by default. Next up here, this is probably going to enrage a number of people. If you use HP and you ever have to call in for support, well, you might be waiting 15 minutes at the minimum in order to get any support. And this is being reported as stalling tactics that are designed to push print or PC users to online support or self-solve. Now, it's worth noting this is not globally just yet. They're saying here it's the UK, Ireland, France, Germany, and Italy. Although, based on other companies that I've used in the past just for calling support, I'm usually on the phone for quite a bit before someone even talks to me. Anyways, here they say the objective is to influence customers to increase their adoption of digital self-solve as a faster way to address their support question. This involves inserting a message of high call volumes, I hear that quite a bit, to expect a delay in connecting to an agent or offering digital self-solve solutions as an alternative. Let me know your thoughts about this one in the comments below. I mean, I would argue that other companies are probably already doing something similar like this. They just haven't been public about it. And I would also argue that this is probably a prime example of where AI is stealing jobs. And I would also argue that this is highly misleading. I guess unless they were expecting one call and more than one person called in at the same time, and maybe they could argue it that way. Either way here, this is not a good look. And I would say that, well, this goes to show that this is probably the future. Let me know your thoughts about all of this in the comments below. Last up here, we're talking about a very interesting piece of tech. This is a fragrance mouse that has just been announced from ASUS. And well, it's exactly what you think. It's a mouse that has a fragrance on the inside, an internal compartment for fragrant oils. This new mouse is going to be wireless. It can be either 2.4G or Bluetooth. And I'm not certain on how they're going to heat or get rid of disperse those scents. I don't know if it's going to be heated or what here, but at the same time, it's a very interesting concept overall. I would say it's easier just to have a vial of oil somewhere on your desk as opposed to within the mouse. I don't really have a need for something like that, but maybe someone here finds this interesting. Overall, it's a very unique mouse. My concern about this one is scented oils are oils, and I'm curious to see where this tube is going to be located and how that oil does get out. Because I'm thinking if you've got a mouse pad, it's going to get pretty mucky and gross pretty quick if the oil is dripping anywhere in the vicinity of where you're using that mouse. I really don't know here. I'd really like to see this thing in action and how it actually works. I am curious about it, even though I don't want one. If you want one, let me know. I mean, based on the pictures here, it does seem that this might be the compartment, but then there's even less of a compartment there with the cover on it. I don't know. But anyways, that is all I've got for you in this one. Straight to the point, all stuff and no fluff. The fluff today is cuddling with Mrs. Sujano. Mrs. Sujano is also very under the weather, and well, this last week has been a struggle. Is it going to slow us down on our travels? Absolutely not. Do I prefer camping because this stuff usually doesn't happen? Absolutely yes, and we're getting really close to camping season. I'm very excited about that. Anyways, we talked about a bunch today. Feel free to discuss anything we talked about in the comments below. If you liked this video, leave a like. If you didn't like this video, leave a like. Hit that subscribe button. Check out my other videos, and don't tempt fate. Save your state, and I'll see you tomorrow, maybe.